Hey everyone, welcome to the Health Made Simple show this week. Cool. I'm excited to be here. We've got a really cool topic today. Even just talking to Dr. Bart before the show, I've learned a lot. So you guys are in for a treat. You're going to learn lots of info. So say hi to me in the chat. I am dialing in as always from Perth, Australia. Hey Flo, how are you? Whereabouts are you? Let me know where you're calling in from around the world while I just share this on Facebook. Sugarland, Texas. Hey, Dr. Bart, how's it going?
I'm excellent. I made it.
Yes, awesome. All right, so I'm gonna get us going on Facebook. Hey, Whitney. Hey, Kelly.
Hi, Kel. Hi, Whit. And then, hey, Flo from Sugarland, Texas. I love it. Taking a little of my magic juice right now. All right, and I'm getting some water delivered to me, which is awesome. And then, I don't know if anyone can see well. My dog friends just left, but they'll probably be back in just a little bit here. So for those of you who are just jumping on here tonight, there's a Q&A section, and then there's a chat section down there. So you can put comments in probably either one of those. And I think Karen will make sure she gets those, and I'll see the chat, but just go ahead and click those down below. Especially tonight, we're going to go into brain health in just a moment here. This is a huge topic, huge topic for those of you have ever had to deal with any brain fog or anything like that. We're going to dive in deep tonight, and this is one of my more favorite conversations to have, because when we're really talking about becoming superhuman, it all starts with this guy upstairs. It all starts with the brain. So if we're going to be superhuman, we got to have ourselves one good working brain. All right, give me a second here.
True.
Claire's going on here. All right. Karen, we almost ready to roll there?
We are. All right, we are live. So let's look, before we start on, we get new people that join us every week, which is really exciting. So I'll just, for those of you who haven't met Dr. Bart, he is a healthcare provider for over 20 years now, practicing a range of different modalities. So chiropractic, acupuncture, kinesiology, nutrition and supplementation, and functional testing, all from his clinic, Balance Health Studio on Seagrove Beach in Florida. And he's also the founder of the Health Edge program, which is a virtual health program for executives and entrepreneurs wanting to optimize their health and really take their performance to the next level. So he's also worked with thousands of people around the world, some celebrities, athletes, all trying to look to really become superhuman, which is what we talk about each week, is tips and advice for you guys to really take your health to the next level. So as you said, this is a good topic.
Yeah, huge topic. So in fact, I would say that this could be one of the most overlooked topics in terms of where it lies in terms of importance, and that's brain health. And and I tell you what, I used to be as guilty. And hopefully, if you want, I'm going to share with you some strategies and some things that I do, and where in the priority list where I put my own brain. I feel like I got a big glare here tonight. Anyways, so yeah, brain health is one of the biggest, maybe overlooked topics out there, and yet I will tell you, it's as important as anything. So when we start talking, which we've already talked a little bit about adrenals, and we've talked about hormones, and we'll dive deeper into all these topics, but all of them ultimately go back to the brain. And it becomes a little bit overlooked. And I'm going to dive in deep tonight. So for those of you just jumping on here, awesome. Love having you. Stay tuned all the way to the end. At the end, I'm going to introduce a supplement to you that is the absolute #1 anti-aging supplement that you can put in your body. It is not expensive. When I talk to you about it, you're going to be shocked that more practitioners are not using this. This is something I use in my personal life, and I make sure that a lot of my clients have it as well. So make sure you paid attention all the way to the end there. And of course, I'll give you some strategies that some of the supplements we use, but this, I will tell you, Karen, when it comes to brain health, it is all about integration. We have to look at everything. And maybe that's one of the reasons that it's overlooked, is that brain health requires us to step back a little bit and kind of look at the entire landscape of our health, which, this is what we do here on, Health Made Simple show. Like, we're always looking at that holistic approach of like, how do we continue to strategize to continue to level up? And today it's going to be all about this guy upstairs, because at the end of the day, everything we do, how well your body works, your muscles work, your gut works, your adrenal glands, your hormones, whatever, all boils down to the brain.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and as you said, it's often overlooked. So let's start off with some symptoms. A lot of people talk about having brain fog. What when they're talking about this, actually, what is brain fog? Let's start there.
Yeah, so it kind of crosses the board. So it can go for, just so everyone follow me here, because a lot of people say, well, I don't think I have brain fog. Well, it goes like this. Mm-hmm. You lose memory, you lose concentration, you lose motivation, you lose the inability to want to tackle more tasks.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting one, because your brain's overwhelmed. Literally, your brain's overwhelmed. Things like, listen, many listeners here, and listen, I am not knocking different diagnoses of doctors, but when you hear things like adult onset ADD, that is a brain issue, folks. That is brain fog. That's what we're talking about. There's no such thing. That's something that happens when you're having less brain function. That's what adult onset ADD. So losing words, forgetting names, and I'm going to tie this in later near the end to a very specific nutrient you're lacking. If you're forgetting words, if you're forgetting names of people that you should know, of course, you have a little lack of motivation. If you're just not coming up with the things that you should, you're just not as sharp, your concentration, your ability to articulate well, the clarity to look through and go through different topics. This is what we see every day. And listen, I've been as guilty and still going through an ebb and flow. I suspect I'm not the only one out there that if I can do this much, I try to do this much. Yeah.
Okay, I might be guilty there as well, for sure. And I think some of those symptoms to go through, because even fatigue, we were talking about earlier, right, can be a brain kind of fog symptom.
The moment our brain becomes deficient, the moment our brain becomes overwhelmed, and we'll dive into a little bit what that means. The moment that happens, we start to see a downregulation of function, fatigue, concentration, the ability to multitask. I'm not a real big fan of multitask, but I think everyone understands when I say multitasking, ability to kind of do a little bit of everything. Hey, listen, anxiety, depression, all of those fall into this category, and we'll dive deep in this short period of time. We're going to hammer in enough where people, I hope you all scratch your head and say, yep, I need to, or I want to start taking better care of my brain, because at the end of the day, it's getting gnarly. It's symptoms. And if we think about the diagnosis, like, Karen, we're seeing, Alzheimer's like doubling every year. Alzheimer's is a brain issue. We know that. 6th leading cause of death in our country. I don't know what it's like over there in Australia, but in our country, 6th leading cause of death. Like, it's catching up, and it's not losing ground, it's gaining ground.
Yeah.
Parkinson's, dementias, all of these are abnormal brain functions. And after we talk about it tonight, hopefully every one of us goes, all right, I better take better care of my brain, because it's not just that we need to take care of it, we also have to defend for it.
Yeah. And I think, because some of these things like Alzheimer's, we put them into happening later, but we have to, some of these things, these mechanisms that are happening in our brain are starting early, right? Like, even if we don't have, I think a lot of us have some of these brain fog symptoms. I mean, as I said, I'm guilty of a lot of them. But why do you think, I guess, we don't focus on our brain health as much?
Yeah, I think there's really 2 reasons for that. And I think we'll all get this when I say it. It's the number one is that it doesn't hurt. We focus on things that hurt us, either emotionally or physically. So, if I have pain, I'll certainly focus on that. If I can't move my arm, I give that a lot of attention. If I'm gaining too much weight and it gives me emotional pain, I'll focus on that. That's one of the reasons, because there's not a lot of brain associated symptoms that, there are all of those ones we just talked about.
Yeah.
But we put those in other categories. Like that might be all of those. Someone might say, well, those are all the symptoms of adrenal fatigue, or all those are all the symptoms of hypothyroidism. And again, those precursor to that is brain function. And I think the other part here is this, is that we don't have any traditional testing. Yeah. So no one has a score sheet to say, hey, this is what your brain is doing. So I think those two really, because it doesn't give us pain. We're, as humans, we're human. So we don't react unless we're like under the gun. So, without pain and without anything testing us, telling us that this isn't working so good. So for example, cholesterol doesn't hurt us. No one would give a poop about their cholesterol levels. It never gives us pain, but because we test it, we have that as a second or third leading drug in our country. Only because we test it, it doesn't give us a single ounce of pain. So with brain health, because we don't have any tests, and I'm a little accurate in saying we don't have any. We do have testing. So I test all the time. There are different tests that we have that we can test for things like neurotransmitters and things like oxytocin and dopamine and serotonin and HPV levels. There's a lot of these different technical tests that we can run for this. And there's very specific neurotransmitter tests that you can run. They're not as popular because, again, there's not someone coming in and be like, I think I need my neurotransmitters tested. Prior to that, what happens is we have other symptoms like anxiety and depression. And remember, anxiety and depression aren't necessarily diseases. They are symptoms. We forget that. They're symptoms of what's going on within our brain.
And I think also some of the symptoms that we were talking about in terms of concentration, or maybe even forgetting names, or some of that stuff, we start to think of as that's normal for us, or we don't link it sometimes with something that we can do, in our health to improve these kind of functions. So I think sometimes, these can be some early warning signs that things aren't working properly, and that there's some things that we probably should be focusing on and doing, but we kind of let it slide because, as you said, it's not painful. It's kind of these low level things that just get worse over time.
Yeah. So, when it comes to forgetting and memory and stuff like that, sometimes it's easier. And I'm going to do the best I can to just explain what happens with memory and why we can remember some things and why we don't at some times. The simplest explanation is this, is that at some point your brain gets full.
Yeah.
Okay? When your brain is full, and we're going to dive into what full really means in just a moment. You could have too much going on. We could have some biochemical things going on. When your brain is full, your body shifts a little bit more into just really survival mode. And in survival mode, when we're down into that mode, and we don't want to just be in survival mode. We want to be in creative and loving life and having energy and fun and all that, excitement mode. Survival mode is, listen, I'm going to do only what it takes to survive to get through to this next step here. When you're in survival mode, your body thinks, do I really need to remember this person's name? And the answer is no. So it doesn't dig deep into the brain, into the cerebellum, or into the other memory parts of the brain. So when we start to find ourselves, and you usually see these when we have very specific things going on in our life, like lack of sleep, you end up in survival mode. So I'm going to jump a little bit here and talk about the causes. Like what causes these things? Because the last one I get into is really what I want to dig into tonight, because I think it's going to be a new understanding for most people. The fourth thing that causes brain dysfunction. Number one is poor sleep. And I think everyone here on this, like probably sometime this past week, I have, lacked some sleep, and then my brain just doesn't fire as well. And we have some tools to help compensate for that, but we got to be very careful how we do that. Unfortunately, a lot of the tools we use for lack of sleep are driving this sucker deeper. So we got to be meaning like stimulants. We got to be careful of that. Number two it's another S. The first one, the S, is the sleep. The next one is stress. Karen, what's interesting here, and we were talking a little bit before the show, is that, and I was telling you, I've been reading a lot of research lately on brain health. And there is a very specific term that they use now called RNT, repetitive negative thinking. So folks, here we are. This is being studied now. So it's in the research journals now. We're seeing it in peer-reviewed stuff. It's called RNT. High levels of RNT, high levels of repetitive negative thinking, are becoming a link to things like Alzheimer's, a link to things like dementia. So these are real things. When we talk about stress, I'm not just talking about like, oh, we had a stressful day, but the real that gets run in our brain. And right now, with all the things going around the world, even just fear, having fear regularly, that's a repetitive negative thought. So those are things that are really, really impacting and down-regulating the brain. So that's two. So it's sleep, and then stress. Of course, sleep, stress, sugar. Yeah. So my number one thing, I almost forgot it. Yeah. So sugar, and that goes into the big category of diet, but nothing burns the brain out faster, because the brain actually loves sugar. Like we see the brain, like we've seen in like under different research, we can see the brain light up when we take sugar, and then it goes dark fast. And that's a challenge there. So those are the top three. And I think every show you guys watch with us here, you'll hear me talk about, we got to get better sleep. You got to get rid of the stress, and got to down regulate the sugar. If you do that, you'll be closer to, becoming a superhuman. Number 4. And this is a new one. This is probably new and going to be a new term, and it's not new in the research and what a lot of us are doing in functional medicine right now. And it's leaky brain. Many of you have heard of what we call leaky gut, but there's also a technical term out there now called leaky brain. And this is something that is a big cause of the brain fog and also the downregulation of the brain.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, before we were talking about it, I hadn't really heard too much about leaky brain. So what do we mean by leaky brain?
So let me back up. So I'm going to guess. And guys, if you have questions at this point, if you just put them in the chat or into the Q&A. I'm diving around, wiggling around here a little bit. So let me go to leaky gut real quickly here. And I promise you, we'll do a show on leaky gut. So leaky gut happens when we have intestines, and I'm going to roll it this way so we can see what happens. We have our intestines, and we have a big line of a small intestine and a large intestine. And then we start putting things in like sugar. We start putting things like GMOs in, toxins, foods that our body cannot recognize. Then your body produces something called zonulin. You don't need to know that, but all you need to know is that zonulin opens up the gaps. Zonulin breaks down what we call the tight junctions. There's literally these tight junctions your intestines are kind of bound together. The zonulin gets in there and creates these gaps here. And then literally what's on the inside of your intestines start to leak out. The challenge here is now we leak out bacteria, viruses, heavy metals. And this stuff literally leaks out, gets pulled up through your liver into your bloodstream, and circulated through your body. Now it gets up into the brain, or tries to get into the brain. That same zonulin gets up, and now it starts to break down your blood-brain barrier. And this is where the rubber hits the road on. This is the problem. Because now so the blood-brain barrier literally is supposed to be a barrier, like stay out, where certain things are not supposed to be crossing into the blood, into the brain, and they are now. Heavy metals are getting up into there, bacteria are getting up in there, viruses are getting into there. In a different story, I'll talk about a personal story that I have where the crossing of the blood-brain barrier by an antibiotic, it killed someone that's very special to me. So anything that crosses the blood-brain barrier, there is an innate intelligence of a gatekeeper that's there. And that's why that barrier is there. Medical doctors who give medications are always very privy about medications that do or do not cross the blood-brain barrier. They kind of said, well, I'm not going to use this one, I'm going to use this one. The challenge is we are starting to develop this, all of us. If we've had leaky gut, if we put these junk in our body, and if I really boil it down to why we're seeing it more now than ever, it's because of GMOs, these genetically modified organisms that your body cannot break down. They become more permeable. They get out of the gut into the bloodstream and up into the brain. And once they get in, they start to break down the blood-brain barrier. That's what we call leaky brain. And that's when we start to see, all kinds of disorders with the brain, everything I just listed, but then other things where literally people are just, they're literally getting a little crazy because now we've got stuff going up. And here's the thing about the brain. A lot of our things, like your arms, and you get vessels, you get things going in and out. Once things go up, they're stuck. And things keep going up. Very difficult to get things out, like inflammation. Very difficult to get things out, like heavy metals. Technically, to get heavy metals out of your brain, you've got to drain and clean the entire body. And that is not an easy task. So once things get up in there, they can get a little sticky. So we've got to defend the blood-brain barrier. We've got to get it stronger. We've got to stop putting the toxins in.
So we really have to I guess, really think about our gut, our nutrition, what we're putting into our body, because potentially this stuff is going up into our brain, is what you're saying, really. And I mean, we're going to do I think we'll do a whole show on leaky gut, right? And
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, that's what we're talking about here is kind of, making sure that we're preventing leaky gut. We're like really cleaning up our diet so this stuff is we're not having these issues.
Yeah, so it's that when it goes back to diet, and you keep hearing me saying sugar, sugar, and sugar. And the reason with sugar, remember, sugar damages tissue in the body. So that's where it starts. So when we say like really what is getting up there, when things get up there, we use sugar. So even if sugar is allowed to cross the blood-brain barrier, it's given permission to do that. It creates inflammation. So once we have inflammation in the brain, and sometimes that happens just because we're dehydrated. So that's a simple brain, biohack, if you want, stay super, super hydrated. So those little things, but if we overlook our diet, and you've had a little history of leaky gut. And how do you know if you've had a leaky gut before? You've had some kind of discomfort with your gut. It doesn't matter what. You get bloating. You've had irritable bowel syndrome. IBS. You've had Crohn's. You've had colitis. You've had constipation. Anything that throws your gut off. You've taken antibiotics more than once in the last 10 years. Any of these things will leave you very prone to creating this thing that we call leaky gut. Toxins get out of there, bacteria go up, get in the bloodstream. They start knocking on the door in the brain. And that's where we got to start to clean the body out as much as we possibly can.
Yeah. So you talked about, so sugars. Why are GMOs such an issue?
Well, the best way, big topic there.
Okay, and we can do a whole.
But just Karen, just think of it like this. One of the reasons that GMO is such an important topic right now is we have genetically modified organisms, and these are chemicals, herbicides, pesticides, chemicals that we're putting into our body that our body does not know how to break them down. It does not know how to process them. So what happens is your body says, it's basically every organ says, pass, go to the next one, pass, go to the next one. And they keep pushing them along because they don't know what to do with them. And they get stuck. Follow me closely here. They'll end up landing after they do all the damage, ravishing the body, but beating the heck out of the body. They land in a protective cell, which are fat cells. So that's GMOs make us gain weight, and your brain is made of fat. So when we start consuming all of these GMOs, and listen, GMOs, folks, have only been around for 15, 18 years max. So if you're only 20 years old, there's a chance you've been eating GMOs your entire life. And that's the difference like when I grew up, if I ate a potato, it wasn't GMO. So the ones that are now, the last 15 years, almost all GMO, almost 99% of corn out there, GMO. So then I could go on and on. But those chemicals, our body doesn't have the ability to, it doesn't have the recognition of what they are. So I wish I could quiz everyone right now. For those of you who were on last week, what did we talk about when we talked about the number one diet if you want to be, a superhuman being? We talked about God's garden. And the reason I put it that way is because if it's not in God's garden, see, there's a link between mind, body, and nature. So human and nature have a synergistic, relationship going on. But chemicals don't fit into this relationship. Yeah.
No, that makes sense. So what about good nutrition? Like, is there some stuff that we can add in that's good for our brain?
Oh yeah. That's where it gets fun. So that's why I always want people to know that there's always like fun strategies you can take to move yourself in the direction of becoming more superhuman. So I guess I'll share some of the things I do.
I asked you earlier, what do you do for your brain? Because I was super interested to see what do you do?
Yeah. So first, when I was talking to Karen earlier, I was telling her that I have a heavy emphasis on my brain function at this point. Knowing that if your brain goes, it doesn't matter how good the rest is. So, and just seeing it, if you've ever been around or witnessed or met someone that had Parkinson's or dementia, Alzheimer's, it's not pretty. And it's painful to watch. It's saddening, at least it is for me, because you see a physical body, but the brain doesn't work. So for those reasons, and knowing that my goal is that I'm going to make it to $120 or better, I know I got to keep this guy working because this guy is going to tell this guy what to do. So here's some of the things I do. I have this simple strategy that if I eat I'm always eating a fat with whatever I'm eating. So that just so like simple. So even if I'm not in like full blown keto, if I look at my plate, I always make sure there's some level of fat there. A big one, and hear me close on this. This is one of the better strategies. I'm going to bounce all over here, is no stimulation, no caffeine without fat.
Okay. So why?
Why? Because one, when we take in caffeine, it stimulates the brain, also dehydrates it. It's a diuretic. So if we dehydrate the body, dehydrate the brain, you get inflamed. And those things, then it causes headaches and that kind of stuff. Or then you'll feel like you need something. So then people reach for sugar. That's when we start to snack in coffee, sugar, and then move into the day. In the event, so people have heard things like bulletproof coffees and stuff like that. So I add fat to any type of caffeine that I ever might take. So I hear people say, no, I keep it clean. I just drink black coffee.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. I'm glad you don't have all the junk in there. But for function and making sure that we have good brain health, one of the best things is add fat. Your brain is made up of 50% fat. 50% of that is very specific, called DHA. But that being said, when you put the fat in there, it puts less stress on the adrenal glands. Less stress on the adrenal glands. Remember, the adrenals talk to the brain. So if you calm the adrenals down, you're having less influence on bothering, essentially irritating the brain. So
fat in your coffee, what do you put in?
You put me on the spot.
I am. Well, because for some people they'll know, cool, bulletproof coffee. I've seen that. I'm going to put some coconut oils and things in. But for other people, they might think, I'm adding cream. Is that a fat?
I do a couple of things. So
yeah. What do we add in that's like a healthy fat? Because for some people this will be a new, for some people it won't be, but for some people it'll be a new idea.
Well, I will say this. I've always enjoyed the coffee experience. Now I love the coffee experience. So,
I love that.
So I put a couple different fats in my coffee every morning. So butter is my primary source of fat. I use a grass-fed butter. I use it every morning. It's a pretty healthy scoop. I put I'm probably close to a tablespoon in there.
Okay.
Of butter in there. And then I also use some MCT oil. That's a little overkill because I'm using two sources of fat now, but MCT oil is very, very good source of brain fuel. It is one of the easier, when your brain's using MCT oil, it'll activate the most of your brain possible. So those are the two things. So I have my organic coffee every morning. I put my butter in there. I put my MCT oil in there. And then I'll also use, so locally we have, they call it Whole Foods, and I get an organic coconut creamer.
Okay.
So I lean away from most dairies. I know you can get some organic ones and stuff like that, but for me and my body, I personally lean away from. If you get a good organic, like full fat creamer, so don't use the half and half. Don't use any of that. Use the full fat creamer. That's the way we want to go. No sugar.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, Flo asked you saturated fat or any special type. So I think we've hopefully answered that. And any comments on the saturated? I mean, they're saturated fats that you're adding in the butter and.
Yeah, so when it comes to all that, like saturated, polyunsaturated, that usually confuses me. So I just go back to God's garden.
Yeah, I love that.
Comes from the root of a plant, tree, walks in the garden, swims in the sea. I eat it because Karen, when I would try to tell my clients, go for the polyunsaturated, it would confuse them. So I don't even keep track that way. If it's real, I'll put it in my body. If it's not, it won't. Yeah,
awesome. And fats with all the rest of your meal, really, it's because that's what so much of your brain is made up of.
Yes. Yeah. So there's, I'm going to share a couple supplements later, but there's like a given supplement that everyone should be taking for brain health. And I'll say this for brain health, for joint health, et cetera. And that's a fish oil and specific part of that fish oil. So I think a little while ago in my number one diet for human beings, part of what I added was cod liver oil. That's still my favorite. And that very specifically is something in there called DHA. We all need DHA, folks. I don't care how much fish you eat, you need more. Because this is also it's also combating all of The omega-6s are carbohydrates or junk or stress, repetitive negative thinking that we're having. You need these omegas. That's what makes up our brain. We do know when they do the studies on brain health, and even people that have concussions and whatnot, that they have a shrinking of the brain. And these fats are what keep the brain robust.
What about any other things that everybody should add in? Like we talked about fish oil. We were talking about a couple other things.
I think, like, so when people say, well, what do you do for just regular fat and everything? I'll eat a lot of avocado, of course, and olive oils, but I look at that plate and I always make sure that there is some type of fat taking place there. One of my favorites is still, one of my favorite snacks is sardines.
Oh, you know what? I wish I could eat them. I hear that over and over again, but I struggle.
So ask me later when I talk about the #1 supplement for anti-aging in the world. Ask me, bring back the conversation of sardines, and you're going to see why sardines is a damn superfood. It really is.
Yeah, I hear that. I believe it. All right, I might have to give it another go, or we'll circle back when we come to the supplements because I hear that, but I struggle to eat that. Okay, so we've got some things we can do for nutrition. What about exercise?
Yeah, great topic. So when we think about the brain, a lot of people think exercise is good for the body, but without exercise, it's bad for the brain. And this is important to understand. Exercise, exertion. So listen, not every one of us needs to go to the CrossFit gym. That's not what I'm talking about. But exerting and pushing our body a little bit is going to dictate the level of hormones that your body makes, and many that are made in the brain. So if we don't exert a little bit, the number one anti-aging hormone in the human body is something called growth hormone, and that's made in the pituitary gland. So we want to activate the pituitary gland through exercise. So let me jump back to the gut a little bit. We talked a little bit about that gut-brain connection. Part of one of the reasons that we get when we have a lot of junk coming into our body and into our gut, it downregulates brain function because literally your gut talks to a gland up here called your pituitary gland. That pituitary gland is part of your brain. So every time, if it has so much junk in it, it's bombarding the brain with, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And if your brain has to keep answering those questions, it can't do the other tasks it's supposed to. And those tasks could be things like helping your heart out, helping your liver out, helping your skin heal, never mind taking care of the kids and working on work and all those other things. So bombarding our bodies with bad foods also bombards the brain. So we've got to start to really kind of think about that whole, that's the integration part that I'm talking about.
Yeah. And what you were talking about in terms of your brain getting full, like it's not
full
with tasks or full with ideas or full with work necessarily or full with stress. It can be full with toxins, full with with sugar coming from your gut, with things, GMOs, full with those kind of things as well, is what we're saying.
Another one that I want to mention is medications.
Yeah.
And I can't get off this conversation, this call tonight, and feel good about, serving everyone if I don't at least mention this, because it's not talked about enough. So there's important medications out there right now that are down-regulating. I just got a visitor, George, that are down-regulating human function. And so I'm going to roll off a couple here. Anti-anxiety medications will down-regulate memory. Statins down-regulate memory, sleeping aids downregulate memory. So these are all things that when we start to lose our memory, we shift gears and we look for stimulants, we look for sugar, because when we are high on sugar, when we have those snacks constantly, it lights our brain up. But those are also the very things, so like Parkinson's right now and Alzheimer's, we consider those type 3 diabetes type issues. I know there's no such thing, but we're saying these are the long-standing impact of down-regulating human function. So those connections, there's several medications that when we take them on a regular basis, they're literally down-regulating our brains. So it's, we have to at least put that on the table when we start to think about integration. Of course, I'm not telling you to come off those meds, but we have to think about this because maybe you're on those and you need to be on those. Now the strategy, the superhuman strategy says, all right, how do I counterbalance this pendulum? Instead of being way over here, how do I help this down? We'll talk about that with some of the herbs that we're going to use.
Yeah. And I think that's a good way to look at it, right? You're not saying, I mean, if you do need to be on some sort of medication for something, then what else can you do to balance that out? Or can you really optimize everything else you're doing to give your body the best chance of being able to detox some of the things that are, you know, maybe not, you know, not serving your body from these medications, right?
So we'll go to detox in just a moment. I want to go back to exercise.
Okay. Yeah.
Especially when it comes to brain health. And one of the things about brain health is using our brain, flexing our brain. It's soft matter, it's dura matter. So we need to flex it. So I'm just having this conversation the other day with someone that was in my office, and the fact that most people really suck right now at math. And because we don't use our brains anymore. Yeah. You know, we use our phones, we use all these other gadgets. So we're not having a lot of really deep thought. We're not thinking much anymore. If you don't know something, you don't know the definition, you don't know how to, like, you just Google that stuff, right?
We don't know how to get somewhere. Like we don't remember how to get like
linear thinking
place away anymore. We just like put it straight into our phones, follow the GPS.
Yeah, think about it. Like everything, we have instructions. We can't get 10 instructions. We watch a video on YouTube, and then every time we get instruction 1, we hit pause. We do this, then we come back. So we are down regulating because we're not flexing that muscle. And it's no different than if we don't flex the biceps, they're going to go away. But we've got to flex our brain. So as much you can get involved with. So I'm on Facebook the other day, and a buddy of mine from Atlanta sends me this, like, I want to call it like a mind blank, but I won't use that four-letter word. There was just like this mind exercise. And he's like, I got it right. No one else is getting it right. Private message me the answer. In about 4 minutes in of trying to figure this thing out, I just quit. I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like these are the things I would, in the past, I would thrive on. That linear thinking, being able to kind of cross-pollinate a lot of different thoughts and keep moving things forward. So listen, I'm talking about flexing the brain, but things like old school crossword puzzles, doing a puzzle, being able to see things, all of those things that, quite frankly, there used to be old school things. We don't see them as much nowadays.
What about doing creative things? Does that, you know, even like maybe languages or music, or even just something you like to do that's creative? It could be creating anything. Maybe it's, it doesn't even have to be artistic creation. Maybe just, writing, these kind of things.
Yeah, so absolutely. Any of those creative things. I'll tell you my favorite thing. So I like, I like to, do Facebook Lives and stuff like that. I like to force my brain to not be prepared and have to excel. So listen, most of us won't do that. And I used to not do that as well. Like I now, and I'll fail. So if you guys watch me on my Facebook Lives, I go in there all the time, and they're a mess, half of them. I always get my message out, but I don't know what I'm saying prior to it. I don't have a script or anything like that. But that exercise is one of the exercises of forcing my brain into these uncomfortable situations where I had to be articulate, or had to have some clarity. That's an art. That's my art. And then there's other arts, people who literally draw. Like, listen, if that's in your blood and that's your passion, you got to do that, because that's what fires up your brain. We've got to get back to our creativity, being task driven, checking off our list. That's not what's moving us in the direction of being superhuman.
Yeah. And also maybe sometimes having time or taking the time to think something through. I feel like we're so fast also in those tasks, we don't think, take a minute, can we do this? Even if you have got a task-based thing that you have to do all the time, can you take a minute to think about, can I do it better? Or just we've kind of lost that. I can't really remember exactly what they were talking about, but I heard someone talk about how boredom was actually beneficial for us. Like the fact that we've lost that, we don't want to be bored for a second. If we're waiting in line, we're on our phone. If we're doing anything, we're and guilty, so guilty. But that time of being bored, let's say, gave us time to think about things, or just use that part of our brain.
Yeah, all of that. And I think those are some of the contributing factors. And I think that, you opened up asking me this question, why don't we pay attention to the brain? Is because those are the things right there, that inability for us to get creative. I'm sure if we just see a raise of hands here, how many parents when they were young, I would come in the house and I'd say, I'm bored, and they just kick me out. Yeah. My mom would just kick me out and say, go outside and play, and be like, play what? And figure it out. Yeah. And next thing you know, you got a stick in one hand and a rope in the other, and you're just making stuff up. In that creativity, in the midst of that boredom, that pause is something that I think a lot of us, we don't have enough of that availability taking place right now. So no doubt about it, having a little bit of like downtime to just be able to think, and I think for a lot of us, we've used this moment, like the quarantining to become a little more creative, to wake up our brains again.
Yeah, which is definitely a good thing. So as you said before, if you've got any more questions about brain health, or maybe some of your experiences, let us know in the chat, or let us know in the questions if you're watching us on Facebook. So let's move into some of the supplements we were talking about. Like what are some of these things that people, before we do.
Yeah, I was just going to say detox is a big part of it. But I just, so for the moment here, when you ask me personally what I do, that is one of the reasons that I incorporate intermittent fasting. So if you guys missed that show, and you can go back and catch it, that is one of the reasons I did it. So I think of drain the body to drain the brain. And that's what we want to do. So we want to get things back out. So we get that out. So at least wanted to address that. But we'll talk about, we'll make a show all about different cleansing and toxing. I think that would be a good one. Different cleansing, different types of different things that we can do to help the body get clean. Yeah. All right, let's dive into some of the herbs, because these are exciting. I love my herbs. I love the different vitamins. I love the one I'm going to share with you about anti-aging. And there's really 3. And again, we'll do the same thing. Hopefully you guys can put a link in there. And then for those of you guys on Facebook and those guys watching tonight, I appreciate you guys keep sharing all this stuff out. It's awesome. I keep getting amazing feedbacks. Keep doing your thing. And then we'll always make sure you guys have some level of a discount or something, with their different supplements. There's a couple different herbs I'm going to talk about tonight. And these herbs, I think everyone are going to be familiar with, and they're very, very valuable. Anytime you guys hear me talk about this, please hear me out when I say this, that it is critical that you get quality. If you're going to spend the time, the money, and the effort to put things into your body, make sure that they're high quality, especially when it comes to herbs, because herbs, quite frankly, are unbelievable when they come to having medicinal components and medicinal actions within the body. So the first one that I'm going to recommend, that literally, if you want higher brain function, I'll talk about this a little bit, something called Ginkgo. And my guess is every one of our listeners has heard of the word Ginkgo, or heard of the herb Ginkgo, but maybe you've tried a little bit and really have never understood its true power. So one of the cool, fascinating facts about Ginkgo, it comes from the oldest tree in the world.
Yeah, I didn't know that. That's crazy.
So the
Older
Ginkgo
than dinosaurs, you were telling me, just really old.
Yeah, prior to dinosaurs, the Ginkgo. So in Chinese medicine, so hear me out, they consider the tree very smart. They consider this tree one of the most brilliant things that's ever been on the face of the earth, because it survived everything. It's adapted and survived everything. And here it is, still standing, over 250 million years old. So when you use that herb, that wisdom, that intelligence, that innate intelligence, remember there's a synchronicity between the human and the earth, nature and the earth, you're taking in some of that wisdom. I know that sounds a little frou-frou, but in Chinese medicine, when we want to help the intelligence of the human body, we use Ginkgo. So Ginkgo, in the simplest form, I would tell everyone that Ginkgo is the absolute best when it comes to short-term memory. Okay, it does long-term memory as well, but there's another one that we'll kind of use, and these have different things. So Ginkgo is the absolute best when it comes to short-term memory. But my favorite reason of recommending everyone that whether you've had brain fog, listen, you've ever had a concussion, and this is for all these people. You've ever had, listen, I don't care. It doesn't mean you had to be a football player. You could have had a car accident. You could have been a soccer player and you're heading the ball. You could have been a rugby player, whatever. If you've ever had a concussion, you need to protect your brain. Your brain needs to be renourished. So here is the key that I love about Ginkgo. That is 2 very specific properties that have been studied over and over and over again. That it's neuroprotective. It protects the blood-brain barrier, and neurorestorative. It means it literally can help fix a damaged brain. For those reasons right there, I take my Ginkgo every day. Yeah, so I meant to bring some up here and show you guys, but right before I get on here, what we have here tonight that you're gonna put in the link here, they're pills. I do a liquid. I don't mind the things that don't taste that good, especially if I know they're good for you. But Ginkgo is one of the absolute best. It increases cognition. It helps you think a little bit better. It helps you have memory. It helps you protect your brain. So for that reason alone, so we talked about the leaky gut causing leaky brain. We must protect that blood-brain barrier. So for that reason alone, that's one of my absolute favorites. The second one, did you want to comment on that one?
No, I was just going to say, so you said that you take that every day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you take that every day.
So, yeah, so let me, and I'll explain it even more. So, and I was sharing this with you a little bit. So if I do a lecture, I don't eat. When I work, when I see patients, I don't eat. And the reason I don't eat, because I don't want to waste brain power. It's that simple. If I got something in my gut brain connection it robs my brain power. But I take a lot of herbs. So every morning, if you were to have a camera on me, you see me walk into my office and I take 2 shots. I do adrenal shot for my adrenal system. And then I also do my brain tonic. And that is Bacopa, which is the next one I'm going to talk about, along with this one, which is Ginkgo. So that's an everyday. Now, that being said, if I got more going on, so if there's a student here listening, or if someone, is going to do a presentation and you got to raise the bar, do multiples.
Yeah.
The way that health should work is, and especially when it comes to like vitamins and nutrients and the superhuman strategy, you got more going on, give it more. Yeah. Don't be like, well, I already took one, it kind of worked, but I got this much going on. That imbalance, that's how we become less superhuman. So that's number one. That's Ginkgo, and I'll load up on it. So they'll come in little pill forms, and usually I have people take, 2 twice a day or 1 twice a day. But on the day they got something big going on, maybe take 6 during that day instead of just taking a little bit. And they're just herbs. The beauty is they will help your body function. What your body can't use, it gets rid of. So that's the beauty of it. You're not going to have an overload. You're not going to have a side effect or anything. So the other one I love is Bacopa. And Bacopa is, if you are the busy person and you are that multitasker, you need the boost all the time, Bacopa's for you. So this one comes a little combination. It's got a little Shashandra in there. It's got a little Luthra in there. This little tonic is made for the person who's a multitasker. They think they're awesome at multitasking, so they keep on trying to do it. So, yeah. So that's you. Bacopa's your herb. Now, this works a little bit better for longer term, but in terms of cognition and your ability to sustain it, that's where this one works a little bit differently. So that combination of Shashandra, which helps you detox the liver, and then it has a little bit of Luthro, and Luthro is another wonderful herb. They really just call it a feel-good herb, Luthro. So those 3 herbs are in that little, it's called Bacopa complex. So all 3 are together here. So you might get a buddy, I don't know if you'll see him. George just walked in the room. So that's those 2. Those are the 2 absolute best in terms of increasing brain function, getting ourselves functioning a little bit better, cognition, downregulating brain fog, getting protected. And that's a huge part of this. And the beauty of that Bacopa, it actually starts phase 1, which leads into phase 2 of liver detox. So we talked about detox. We got to get stuff out in order for us to get a better functioning brain.
Yeah. Okay. So we've got Ginkgo and Bacopa, and I did put the link in the chat for everybody. So as we do every week, get 20% off all our supplements for tuning into our show. So the link's there for you guys to check out. What's the third one we want to talk about?
All right, the third one, this is exciting for me. So I didn't know about this until probably about 10 or 11 years ago. And this is the #1 anti-aging supplement that you can take in your body. And I'll explain it. It's called ribonucleic acid. It's referred to as RNA. And make sure you ask me about sardines in a moment. So RNA, so the way I want everyone to think about this. So what does this do for this? 1, it feeds your pituitary gland, which that by itself does enough because that's where your growth hormone comes from. But really what RNA does, it's going to help feed your cerebellum. And your cerebellum is where we have everything from balance to short-term memory to your ability, your cognition, your ability to fire. So in the event that these 2 things happen, you are short in RNA. And I'll talk a little bit more how an RNA works in just a moment. But if you lose words or you forget names, literally like you're thinking about something and you just the words right on the tip of your tongue come up, you have a deficiency in RNA. So let me explain what RNA is. So I think everyone here has probably heard of DNA. That's that DNA is what makes us up. That's what makes us unique. So imagine your DNA has a blueprint, okay? And that's how, like you're gonna build yourself a house and you have a blueprint. But you need copies of that DNA so you can keep replicating the same house over and over again. That's what we do with our cells. We keep replicating our DNA over and over and over and over again. And let's just say the DNA looks like this. If over time it starts to look like this and you don't really see the whole picture, like your copier is getting worn out and there's not enough ink and you don't get the whole DNA, now you start building a funky house. That's what happens to our body. The aging process is when we become poor replicators of our best DNA. That's aging in heart. That's what aging skin is. That's what downregulation of hormones, of organs, of glands, of tissues. It's a downregulation of the ability to replicate the best DNA on board. RNA is the blueprint. That is the copy machine. So DNA is your blueprint. RNA is your copier. So this is what makes copies of that DNA. So for your ability to have strong DNA continuously replicated, it's cell that continue to make cells over and over again. That's going to be determined on how much RNA you have.
So really, everybody could do with this one. Like, do you stay on it? Is this one we keep taking?
Yeah, you certainly can. So here's the fun thing about this. This is the beauty of this. So listen, here's what I don't want people to do. Like eat a cheeseburger, a donut, bag of French fries, and then take some Ginkgo and think, man, because I'm in this food coma, this is going to light me up. No, it doesn't work that way. Yeah. So listen, it's still all of these things. Like remember, nature gave us these medicinal components, but there was a assumption that the body was still relatively clean. So we got to at least be working in that direction. So RNA, yeah, if you want your brain to be fired up and strong, yes. If you're forgetting names, absolutely need RNA. So here's a fun thing. You can like high dose it for a week and like flip it. And how do you know you flip it? Because you stop forgetting things. Yeah. That's the beauty of it. I do have some people have said, well, I forgot to take it. Well, that's because you need to take it. So I want to show you one other thing here. There's a test that you can do. I don't know if this is going to work here. Total random shot here. So there's your cerebellum. Hopefully you can still hear me. I got my fancy mic over here. Maybe you guys can see. There's a balance test that you can do. You guys still see and hear me?
Yeah, we can see you. Yeah, I'm here.
If your cerebellum is deficient of RNA, which by the way, sardines, great in DHA, great in protein, great source of RNA. So those little suckers, those little sardines can make everything we're talking about right now. If you want to eat a lot of them, they're going to cover a lot of bases here. So you can do a simple balance test to see how well. So your balance comes from a part in the back of your brain called your cerebellum. So you should be able to stand on your feet. I don't even know if you can see this. Raise your knee up, hold your arms out, and stand pretty balanced. You shouldn't have too much of a wobble going on. If you find yourself doing one of these jobs, you're out of balance a little bit. And same thing, you do both sides. And if you want to test that a little bit more, so you do it every day, which is cool. If you do it every day, you then discover, wow, some days I'm tired, I ate like crap, I don't have enough DHA, I don't have enough fish oils, I didn't take my Ginkgo, I didn't take my Bacopa, and next thing you know, you wobble. And then if you're really fancy and you really want to push it to see how well your brain is functioning, start closing your eyes. Yeah. Close your eyes, open your eyes. Close your eyes, open your eyes. That requires your brain to work fast. If it's full of stuff, it can't operate fast enough. Now there's other things, you get a bad ankle or something like that, that's fine. But if that's a simple test, and that's one of the ones I love to use RNA for, especially for my athletes. I'll tell you, mentioned early when we were, when you started my little intro, you talked about my health edge people and people that are working towards superhuman. I work with entrepreneurs all over the country, athletes, you name it. You know what their number one thing they want me to do? Increase brain function. A lot of people think it's that they want me to like lose weight and all that stuff. And of course I help with all that stuff. But the number one request of people that are like, have their businesses and all that kind of stuff, or even moms, they want more brain function because they got 3-4 kids running around the house and it's chaotic and their brains are full. And that's when you literally hear them say things like, my brain is full. So that little test right there, you can use RNA, literally. Now, this is how cool it is. Take 3, 4, 5 and try it again in 10 minutes and you'll see the difference.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
guys, have to do that test.
And a clean body. Here's the beauty of when we really start to master our nutrition. It's not that hard. If your body needs it and it's depleted, and I think this gets lost in the conversations of nutrition in general. If your body's depleted, if it's a clean body and you provide it, it works fast.
Yeah.
Your body then says, oh, thank you. I know exactly where to put this because it's missing. And it puts it into that spot. But that again goes, we got to have, this is an integration when it comes to, you know, being a superhuman, especially when it comes to our health, you know, our brain health.
Yeah. So we had a couple of people in the chat give it a go. Flo and Alicia gave it a go here.
Okay, did they do good?
Yeah, did you guys do good? You just said that you've given it a try. You saw, I'm actually at a standing desk today, so I just gave it a go. Yeah, they did it. They were able to do it. So that's awesome. I mean, let us know in the chat, because it's it's a good. I like those kind of physical tests that you can do. You kind of give yourself a bit of a you know, a bit of a barometer of how I'm going. Alicia said even in flip flops she was able to do it.
Solid.
That's awesome.
So you know, one of the ways I get to test myself. So I love yoga. It's my favorite form of exercise. It's good for my mind, good for my body. So I practice a lot of yoga at this point in my life. And so every Sunday I take this spicy yoga class, and it happened to be at my own studio. My wife teaches it. And we do all these balancing acts. And it's so fascinating to watch how 1 week physically I can crush it all. And then very next week I can barely stand. And I start to do, and this is what I want everyone to think about. Listen, we've got to like have these awareness moments. And I'll be like, why can't I balance this week? And I look, oh, stayed up too late the night before, you know, and then I go through my diet. Oh, that happened. And then I ran, like, you go, oh, it makes sense. I'm not functioning on that level. So then those are the moments I'm like, all right, well, I'm gonna get better this week, because next week I'm gonna come back here and crush this. So that's where we get to make, you know, leveling up. That's where we get to make this, you know, this journey to being superhuman fun, because we start to have more and more awareness of our own personal bodies.
Bobby said he fell over twice. That's okay. Yeah, well done for doing it. That's awesome. And I think yoga is really good for that, because I totally, when you're saying that, I know exactly what you mean. I do that in the yoga class too. You'll be like, one week you're nailing it, and then another class it's just everything seems so much harder. So what about if people, let's say they have a few more things that they want to go over with you, some specific things we talked about, you know, or they want to do some of the testing we talked about, how can they work with you? Do they have to be local?
No, it's real simple. You can just reach out to any one of the emails that we put out there. You can reach out, contact us, and we do it virtually. So just like this, we sit down, it's just me and that individual. And it's, you know, it's probably one of the things that becoming more and more popular, the ability to have virtual, you know, doctors and whatnot. So literally I've worked with some people that are not even in our country anymore, which is cool. And, you know, I've with the whole COVID thing going on, we were doing it prior, and now we're doing a lot more of it. And I actually like it, because it's the setting is different. And quite frankly, I feel like the people on that end of it are a little more truthful when they're in their own home, which is kind of cool. Yeah, so it's really been fun. So anyone out there, it's real simple. If you do want to work with me, no big deal. Just reach out to us. We set up a virtual time like this. If you're obviously, you can get on Zoom, we get on Zoom, and then we go from there. And we can order, you know, we can order the test. We can either, you know, email them to you or send you out the kits themselves. So anything we need, we can do that virtual as well.
Yeah, which is super cool. I love that we can send tests out, you know, all over the world, and get this info, jump on Zoom. You don't have to make it down. So it's really cool. All right, well, let's wrap it up and make health simple for everybody today. What is our number one action tip that they can take today to move towards their goal of becoming superhuman?
Just one?
Okay, tips.
All right, tips. All right, so yeah. All right, I'm going to say integration. Okay. Integrate everything and do a little bit. So don't try to be perfect in any one category, but integrate. Do a little better with your sleep. Do a little better with your nutrition. Get a little more detox, intermittent fast. Get the right things that your body can use to continue to elevate up. And again, of course, you know, and I think the second one is this. Are you aware? Like I was just talking with my yoga class, where some weeks, you know, like I can crush it and it feels awesome. And then some weeks I'm not. And instead of like blaming it like, oh, it's too hot or too slippery in here, or whatever, you know, think like, what's going on? So and when it comes to brain health here tonight, when I say awareness, think about the times you get angry at someone, or you're short with someone, you're not acting as loving as you know that you are, or you don't want to do things, you don't want to go out, you don't want to participate because you're always tired, your brain's not working. Rewind a little bit. And instead of justifying and say, why, what's going on? Like, why don't I have the energy? Why don't I have the mental clarity to go share and be with other people? And then if we're asking those questions, then it's easier to find out strategies on how we can level ourselves up. I know that wasn't one, but that's, that was my answer. Yes.
One group. It was one that's okay. I think the awareness one is always, it's always huge because, and that's what I love about doing this show as well, is because hopefully it gives some awareness to people about things that you can look at in your own health and some strategies to be able to go forward. Alicia said it was perfect. So good actions. Yeah, awesome. Cool, guys. Well, this has been super fun. We will be here same time next week, 6 p.m. CST for the Health Made Simple show. So I'll see you then. Bye.
That'll be awesome.